Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this ag forecast for South America, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, our first map here is the brand new European weeklies that just came out, and we're going to look at the time period of November 20th to December 20th. Because over that time period, I'm not seeing much stress in terms of moisture overall across much of Brazil's central, northern, and eastern growing areas. In fact, we're looking at above average precipitation over here from Goiás over to Minas Gerais. Now, if you get into southern Brazil, that's where we're seeing a little bit of a drier bias, but what I'm most concerned about is what we saw emerge in the models here with the new updates, not only here in the near term, but in the long range, the December, January, February forecast for Argentina. And it's dry. It's looking very dry. And we're trying to analyze why it's looking so dry. So why don't we just give this a good discussion here? Now, remember, for those of you that are watching this in North America, Argentina's weather is in many ways similar to what we've got in the United States, with one exception. There's no big land mass as you get toward the colder regions, but there is a mountain chain to the west, and there's westerly wind flow, which means we have to pay attention to the jet stream, the frequency of weather systems coming through, fronts and stuff like that. And the active flow of the trough ridge pattern. And we often watch one thing that really affects that in what's called the Antarctic Oscillation. Now, the Antarctic Oscillation, as you see me present recently, was positive from mid-September through from mid-August through most of September, dropped back down just briefly here in beginning of October below, and then has come back up and is forecast to stay stronger than average. And what that affects is the jet stream around Antarctica. All right, and as it affects that, we've learned a lot about it. For example, if you attempt to correlate the precipitation rate for November and December with the Antarctic Oscillation, these negative correlations you see here mean that that's a region where there just tends to be drier conditions, more high pressure, less low pressure systems sweeping through. And I wanted to take it another step farther, because seeing this, I went back and said, all right, if Argentina is really going to go over dry, what else must come along with this? And I used this great tool. It's from the University of Maine, and it uses all of the Maine reanalysis data sets. And I chose the ECMWF, and I recreated for November and December for this region right here in Argentina, okay, historical time series of precipitation. And I plucked off these really dry years, like 2010 as an example. When you do that, this is what you discover. First of all, I see that the MJO needs to spend a lot of time here, just north of Australia. That's really that's about phase 5. And what's interesting about that is we look out there. In fact, let's just pull this up real quick. I'll pull up a Hofmuller diagram from the European model here. And we will see that that's really what's going to happen. These strong trade winds over the next 15 to 20 days, see that line right there where the reds meet the blues and greens? That's where we have the rising motion, and it sits over phase 5. So when we see phase 5, we know that historically, that area right in through there tends to be drier in Argentina. That's the first piece of this puzzle. The second one is this. I plucked off those years that were dry in November, December, and also produced a plot that shows me what the ocean temperatures were doing. And it's very clear that we had a La Nina, and it hugged right up here along the coast with a warm North Atlantic, a warm North Central Pacific, and possibly some cooler water in place here. Now, you see this map? Look at what we've got right now. This La Nina continues to strengthen, strong trade winds, a lot of cold water beneath it, and it extends all the way to the coast. It's warm in the Atlantic, cold here. And that just lines up very well with what we see here. So when we think about all of that, and then address what's not only happening now, but in the longer term, it made sense that the models came out with a much drier forecast for Argentina, parts of Paraguay, Uruguay, and down through Rio Grande do Sul, which is the southernmost state here in Brazil. This has been a concern we've had for a while. This was going to be the area that had drought risk moving forward. Now, as of late, this is what the last 30 days of precipitation has looked like. In fact, let's just zoom out a little bit so we can see that better. You see that overall, this part of Argentina doing okay. Buenos Aires, drier. Pockets in Rio Grande do Sul, drier. Much of the rest of Brazil's growing area has seen decent precipitation. And where you see some holes here, a lot of time this is due to the fact that we just don't have a rain gauge in that area to report back to the CPC. So let's say that if there's going to be a big problem that emerges it's going to be in the upcoming forecast, which is what we've already looked at the long range. So how about the near term? Well, over the next 10 days, there we go, we can see that there is a chance for some heavy rain in Argentina. It's drier than average in an area here, just parts of southern Brazil, but you're really just Rio Grande do Sul and Uruguay, and maybe this part of eastern Argentina. Very wet north, and this has been an area we've just added lots of precipitation. I'm going to show you where this is all coming through. So go here first. Let me just step you back. I was looking at this right before I recorded. This is what we expect. We just went back in time there, sorry. This is going through the day on Tuesday, getting into Wednesday, and eventually into Thursday. And what we see is this is an area during that time period it's going to see just a lot of precipitation. But as we get into Friday and watch Friday into Saturday, Sunday here, and into early Monday, there we go. So let me rock you back. The weekend. That is where the latest European run attempts to put down a lot of precipitation here. But that's still out there, 6 days. So I want to watch this carefully to see if the models continue to reproduce this heavy rain in this part of Argentina. Because if that fails, the wetter bias we saw in the forecast is going to fail with it. But after that, that front tries to push through southern Brazil, as you notice here, and it really interact with the rest of Brazil's central and eastern growing areas, which is why that region is still forecast to stay so wet over the next 10 days. So a lot is riding on this, bringing in moisture now. If that fails to materialize by next weekend or this upcoming weekend, that just pushes this drought concern for Argentina even farther. Now, looking out fully into week 2, that's where we see the better rains here and the drier conditions starting to show up farther to the south. And we need to be watching all of that very carefully because this is now getting us out to the November 22nd time frame, and I'll come right back to where I started. This would be that same time period, November 20th to the 22nd, all the way out to December 20th, 22nd. Let's watch this carefully because this could become a pretty significant story for growers in Argentina that could affect global production. I want to watch it with you, okay? I'll report back to you to see if there's any changes on Thursday evening, and until then, have a good week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.